I've been following George Webb for quite a while, and after you see this, you should too. We all know about the Gaddafi assassination orchestrated by Obama and his band of deep state traitors, and the Hildebeest's infamous mainstream media interview where she says,
"We came, we saw, he died."
In the following video, which I reposted because the bombshell information it contains makes it a target for suppression, is something else that is not well known and has probably been long since forgotten and buried by the new social media operation Mockingbird, just like they buried the story about Epstein committing suicide in Hanoi on June 25th, a month before his arrest. See the link below. And so, in the interest of dissemination of this information which would explain why the deep state is so terrified, to the point of Bellevue-level incoherent hallucinatory insanity, I present this as something that should be incorporated into the complexity and scope of abject corruption that should be considered when you ask yourself the question, what's taking so long to lock these bastards up? The glaringly obvious answer is that all of them are co-conspirators in the plot to destroy America and to be monarchs in the pecking order of their satanic Illuminati New World Order cabal. It is as simple as that. Don't look for motives or complex reasoning. You'll never find it. You won't find it for the simple reason that it either does not exist or the perpetrators lost sight of the long-term goal and got addicted to the power trip of eating babies and thinking themselves as untouchables, and they were, until truthers took down the mainstream media. The genie is out of the bottle, and Pandora's box has been opened, and hard as they try, and the more they try, the deeper the hole they dig for themselves. There is no escape. They can ban every channel they want to. They can shut down the internet. We have built a loosely knit organization of Patriot friends who will overcome any obstacle. We proliferate and are validated by the censorship because when people see suppression of information, they become insatiably curious as to just what the fuck they're trying to hide. Just one example, exposed exclusively on this channel, that is undeniable empirical fact that a story was written about Jeffrey Epstein's suicide in a North Vietnamese war bunker in Hanoi and was indexed by the search engine that later edited the video to exclude the alleged suicide. The fact that mainstream media worldwide is scripted bullshit is proven empirically by the BBC's Jane Stanley predicting that World Trade Center 7 collapsed on live TV 25 minutes before it actually happened. When you watch anything on mainstream media news, know this. It is all, every single word, every syllable is scripted Hollywood-style propaganda bullshit controlled by 6 corporations that are owned by a group of satanic assholes you probably never heard of. They control you by controlling the information that's available to you. Meanwhile, they're kidnapping 800,000 children a year right under your nose, and you'll never know it unless you get it from people like us, who work tirelessly to expose them. I can't speak for anyone else, but I'll tell you this. I am doing this largely out of my own pocket. If it were not for the generosity of the wonderful people who have supported this effort, I'd probably be doing this from a sleeping bag on a steam grate somewhere. And when it became time to the point where it no longer became economically possible to make videos, I would not have a problem resorting to doing Patriot shit. But His grace is sufficient. I, like Jonah in the belly of the whale, must go where the good Lord wants me. Obviously, I need to be somewhere else other than here. I just wish He wouldn't stress me out to the point where my pressing decision for the day wouldn't be whether I buy a 6-pack of ass wipe or put a gallon of gas in the Jeep. I listen, but He ain't saying shit. But I get it. I got this. Your grace is sufficient, but I'm not going to stoop to the level of a Haji and wipe my ass with my left hand and wash it off in a bowl of water like the Arabs. If it comes to that, take this mission and poke it where the sun don't shine. I'm going to Outback and having a steak and a bloomin' onion. Fuck the calories. This video is reposted as a public service. The source video is linked below. Subscribe to George Webb.
17th, 2020, George Webb here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, Joint Special Operations Command Headquarters. This is the Museum for Special Operations. And the special operations we're going to be talking about today are missiles. Missiles are a key prize in winning and toppling another country. If you topple a country that's wealthy, like an oil state, oil and gas state, or a mining state, like Gaddafi in 2011, there's a lot of spoils. The spoils of war for Gaddafi are not just the gold that he had in reserve. He had about $30 billion in gold. Not just cash reserves, which was $5 or $6 billion, but also the seized assets from the Treasury, $5 or $6 billion. And then you had also the war materiel that he put 25 or 30 years into investing, war materiel. And a lot of those were missiles. And what we're trying to do is figure out this interconnection between these missiles that these special operations keep taking down these countries, what they call Humpty Dumpties. Adam Schiff has a staffer who's involved with Humpty Dumpty, with Jeff Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein. We know Imran Awan and Representative Andre Carson were involved in this Humpty Dumpty activity. We know the UAE ambassador is involved in this Humpty Dumpty. So these are takedowns. And the key spoils of war here are the missiles, right? Now, a lot of people say, well, you know, you get the missiles, that they really don't do you any good because you don't have the launch codes. Without the launch code, it's sort of like the machine gun here that General Shelton's wearing. This is a close friend of General James Jones, by the way, who was also at the Atlantic Council and also involved here with 4th Special Operations Group, the Psych Operations Group here. We'll get to that story later. But like, hey, George, you know, if we got all of Gaddafi's missiles, most of them were Russian. So how's that going to help? You know, you need the launch codes. And this is where Dmitry Alperovich comes in. If you haven't followed the story, I ended up working for a very brief period of time with Dmitry Alperovich. We hired these guys from Ukraine and Russia. It was a hacking group, 12 guys, to write viruses and write virus fixes. But they were also involved way earlier than that. His father, Dmitry Alperovich's father, was involved with the Russian military and launch codes for missiles. It was also involved in hacking other people's launch codes. So, for instance, so that's why you might want to hack into a missile system. We also know that a similar type of takedown from a Russian Buk missile system happened in Ukraine, okay, with the takedown of the Malaysian airliner there. Again, hack into the missile system. If there are a whole bunch of operatives coming on the plane, you could hack into the system. This is the part that the FBI denied later on about knowing about. They denied Dmitry Alperovich being the one who decoded the situation and said who hacked in, that the Russians hacked into the missile system, right? The reason is Dmitry has the back door. Dmitry doesn't just have the back door to the missiles, just to the phones, to the BlackBerry phones that are given to the people who sell these missiles and those codes, but he also has the launch codes for these Russian missile systems. Now, I believe, now I don't know this to be true, but I believe Mikhail, his father, had the old launch codes, and that's his value to Western intelligence, to our intelligence, military intelligence group, was he had these codes. So if you did take over a country that had bought a lot of Russian gear, you'd be able to remarket it. It goes something like this. We'll have a General Shelton or a General Jones or somebody, or a General Grange, plan an operation. Remember, Hillary sends an email to David Petraeus. Again, we haven't been off from day one. We've said this. There's a plan to take Tripoli. Okay, when you take Tripoli, you get everything. When Gaddafi goes in October of 2011, you get the whole ball of wax. Okay, now what are we going to do with all these missiles? We take over. 110 cruise missiles are fired from Tomahawk missiles are fired from U.S. Navy ships in the Gulf. You know the story, British and the whole NATO bombardment with Bouchard from Lockheed. Now we have all these missiles. What do we do with them? Well, if you have Dmitry Alperovitch on your side, and you have Dmitry Alperovitch still has all the launch codes from his dad, Mikhail, we can resell those missiles to other people who want missiles. Maybe like a guy named Soleimani, right? Remember, all these speakers, all these Farsi speakers in our story. We got a Farsi trucking company with transport logistics. We got all these Farsi speakers. And we got, of course, Peter Strzok's father selling stuff to Iran, and then Peter Strzok, his father worked at Isfahan at the helicopter factory and so forth. We say, hey, Soleimani, you get the missiles. We have the launch codes. That's a way of building trust with Soleimani so that Soleimani can say, hey, for every missile we get, just credit us a couple of $1,000,000 when we do the payout for the Iran nuclear deal. So all the war material we get from Gaddafi, we'll basically keep a checklist of all the stuff we get. If you give us all the missile codes, we're ready to go. Same idea holds for US missiles, NATO missiles, or whatever, whenever you do a topple. The key is the launch codes, and Dmitry Alperovitch is going to be the key to the story, right? And I do believe this happened. And this is why the phones are so tightly associated in this story with the operation starting in 2009 when this whole planning event started. Now, there's some interesting twists here with two new Awans that we found this morning. One is a guy named Moshin, M-O-S-H-I-N, Moshin Awan, that comes to Washington, D.C. right after the fall of Gaddafi in December of 2011. Is he there to broker off all the old missiles, to buy some for the Pack Ordnance Factory, to buy some for Soleimani? We don't know, but it's Moshin A. Awan, and he's closely related to Mohammed A. Awan, Imran Awan's father. He files a FARA application. He goes to work for a company called Lord and Bissell, the original Richard Bissell law firm, Bissell's Missiles. Going back in our history, Bissell is just constantly involved with missiles, going all the way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it's an interesting guy. Then there's another Awan named Naila A. Awan, like nail, N-A-I-L-A, S. Awan, excuse me. And she goes to work for the senator, the junior senator of Wisconsin in 2013. Again, there's another Awan there that we didn't know about. So we don't have all the details, but it's just an interesting person. And she's also not working in Washington, D.C. She's in New York, like Imran Awan, and she's in Columbus, Ohio, which is this DOD information center. So people are saying, well, gosh, that's a great theory, George. Yeah, it's just I get it, the Humpty Dumpty with Adam Schiff and Peter Strzok. I get it that we have the launch codes. Peter Strzok would be military intelligence. He would know who would have that. Dmitry Alperovitch, great. It's a theory. You've got a theory going, right? Well, then you go to the IP addresses. Once you go to the IP addresses, it's a different story because you have all the people that would be brokering the missiles that would need to be a part of this, Parnas, Alan Apter with Burisma. You have also O.K. Nwayansky, again, 17-year FBI informant who says that he brokered missiles all over the world, says he brokered arms all over the world, okay? Those IP addresses matching up with Schiff and Strzok. And where do they go? They all go to Columbus, this DOD information center. They all go to the Redstone Arsenal, which is where you would store missiles, okay? And they all go to this Fort Huachuca, where if you wanted to broker missiles over the border to an intermediary, like an El Chapo or someone like that, the same person that you would have brokered weapons through for Fast and Furious to start this whole thing off, you would do it at a place that's very remote, like Fort Huachuca, that's 15 miles from the Mexican border, where you have drone capability. You could deliver them with an MQ-1 or MQ-9 with even more payload. I mean, it's kind of like the IP addresses almost tell the story. There's nothing left for the imagination if you look at the IP addresses. This is where I'm saying that the current MSM is so far away from reality the real IP addresses, it's not even worth considering. Just turn off the television, because they're not considering the IP addresses. They're not considering the IP communications here. We've also got Hina Alvi involved in those same places. It just doesn't make the current story that is out in MSM is talking about Bill Barr being responsible for Roger Stone and the sentencing of Roger Stone. Again, that has nothing to do with reality. The reason why Roger Stone has a 9-year sentence hanging over his head is because Jerome Corsi didn't testify and say, I wasn't the back channel to WikiLeaks. That would have taken 5 minutes. Why should Bill Barr be resigning now? Because he looked into reviewing the Roger Stone sentencing. Why isn't Bill Barr saying, hey, well, this all could have been avoided if Jerome Corsi would have spent 5 minutes and said he wasn't the back channel to WikiLeaks? The whole prosecution theory was based on that. That would have been easy. But again, the IP addresses tell the story. Now, a couple of people are saying, well, where are you getting these IP addresses? You know, how are we drilling down on these IP addresses? Well, I'm prepared to say a couple of sources today. I don't want to give away all the sources, because what happens is, if we don't get enough people researching it, what happens is they wipe the sources. They go destroy the evidence. And I've had this happen numerous times. So there's a delicate balancing act here. But I'll just say one of the groups is Farsight. I worked in San Mateo for Keynote Systems for a long time. A lot of internet traffic going through there in the Bay Area. Farsight's one of the companies. Where are you getting the IP addresses? Where are they coming from? Well, there's a way of, well, Farsight, just to let you know, is you can, they came out with the address, the IP address of the Bill Clinton, or ClintonEmail.com, the famous email server that we're talking about that did all these pay-to-play operations. Okay, there's also another IP address that came out with Printer at ClintonServer.com. Okay, they put out those two email addresses. So this isn't something that's being contested. This is a capability that they can do. Okay, I'll walk here a little bit so you can see a little bit. I'm going to go down to the veterans area here today, just give you a little bit of different perspective. So we know they can do it. How they do it, you basically can shelter your communications to the source and the destination, but in order to make a connection, you have to have some packets that have source and destination. And I'll just leave it at that. We also have MAC addresses, which is for the more technical people out there. When you actually have the physical device, you have the MAC addresses. So you can see a lot more conversations than encrypted conversations. We'll just leave it at that. Farsight's one of the companies that does, excuse me, cold here this morning in Fayetteville. Farsight's one of the companies that does this kind of accumulation. So the communication did occur. We know that Adam Schiff is involved in this kind of Humpty Dumpty activity, which is spoils of war type of thing. And we believe that he's not only doing the spoils of war for NATO stuff. We know we visited yesterday three different places that were involved with the Awans and Lev Parnas with AK-47s. Not only AK-47s, KUSA it's called, Kalashnikov USA, not only selling in the United States AK-47s, but also selling AK-47s to NATO. So Adam Schiff's not just happy selling M4s and M16s through Pasternak and Aeroscraft. He's not happy just selling M4s and M16s. He's also got an interest in selling AK-47s from Lev Parnas to NATO countries and NATO partners. Memorial. And we'll just show that to all of our services. So the bottom line here is we have a lot of metadata that supports the theory that Adam Schiff and Peter Strzok are doing something with the missiles, especially the first bookend of the deal appears to be Fast and Furious. That's a lot of the partnerships with Jeff Epstein. We haven't gone through all the islands and haven't gone through all the partnerships yet with Eric Holder and so forth. We haven't done any of that yet. You haven't seen it yet anyway. But a lot of the partnerships for the weapons start in 2009. The weapons seem to be brokered out through Fast and Furious. It seems like we've chosen El Chapo as our brokerage partner to then get them to Hezbollah. And then once we get them to Alatar, they seem to find their way into these caching places around Libya. And then once the attack of Libya happens, the weapons caches are then moved to Jordan with King Abdullah to position them for Syria. That fails, so then they're reused in Sudan. The weapons, the small arms, are reused in Yemen. And I believe that's those 4 actions were the key things, along with the takeover of Ukraine, along with creating a UN safe zone or green zone in Ukraine in order to get green zone money in Ukraine. What are the pieces here? What are the pieces that people aren't seeing? Well, one of them is, again, we go back to Bijan Kian. Not speculating here. Bijan Kian working closely with Adam Schiff, okay? Adam Schiff, in his Hollywood area, Beverly Hills area, working closely with the mayor of Beverly Hills. We've got him involved in this. We've got a shipping yard down in Long Beach involved with this, with the mayor of Beverly Hills. We've got an agent running in between them. We've got the Bijan Kian investing the money for the California Pension Fund in these Humpty Dumpties. He's the guy who starts in 2009 with the Now Ruse Foundation. That's when he starts in with Mike Flynn, using the encrypted communications. We have Mike Flynn using the encrypted BlackBerries, talking to the Haqqani network. Remember, the Haqqani network in Pakistan is working with the Hezbollah network. Okay, that's the rinse. So if we want to get weapons, if we want to divert weapons from Afghanistan to Iraq, and Iraq's going to be our partner in taking down Gaddafi, if Soleimani, start over. I basically, through my connections between Peter Strzok and Soleimani, Peter Strzok Sr. and Soleimani, use him as a partner and a proxy for taking down Gaddafi to get Gaddafi's stuff. I also use him as a proxy to get Assad's stuff. Okay? Then I keep rolling, basically, through Africa and do Sudan and do Yemen. This is going to be my partner in crime, basically. Soleimani's my partner in crime. Okay? That would explain Soleimani having the encrypted BlackBerries. It would explain how we get weapons to Soleimani. If we wanted to divert weapons to Soleimani, we can't say we're sending weapons to Soleimani. They're a terrorist nation. Peter Strzok can't come out and say, hey, I got a great idea in Congress for Adam Schiff. Why don't we send weapons to Soleimani so he can be our partner in crime to take down Gaddafi? You have to broker the weapons through Haqqani or through Osama bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda organization, one of those 2 organizations. Now, I believe the flip over happened somewhere in the middle of when in 2011 when Osama bin Laden dies. But those are your 2 brokerage channels. The Haqqani network is diverting Afghanistan weapons to Soleimani. They're being staged in the Horn of Africa. This is where I believe Pete Buttigieg is involved beginning in 2009 when he becomes a Navy Reserve intelligence officer. Then you have to move those to either side of Libya. One was Tobruk. We have Mark Turi's evidence of flying weapons from Arsenal to Tobruk for the eastern half, the Benghazi half of taking Libya. And then for the western half, we have Pete Buttigieg there caching weapons for the takedown of Tripoli. Okay, that's how I believe that happened. Syria is a much more complicated situation and it just didn't work. So I won't even bother talking about Syria right now. But you get the idea. If you help us take down this guy, you're going to share in the profits. We have the missile codes, okay? And you basically just do the dominoes and pick up all the marbles. It's just that simple. I don't know. It's kind of the simplest strategy possible. Just we have 7 dominoes. We're going to knock them all down and we're going to get all the stuff. The thing that was a little different was Ukraine. Ukraine, we don't want anybody to win. We want to build the idea of a threat. We want to build the idea of a Russian threat so we can get a whole bunch of money. Bill Taylor needs to build the idea that this Russian little green men are so that we get $17 billion a shot for IMF. We get $1.7 billion in USAID to Kolomoisky. Okay? But we know that we're on the right track here with IP addresses because Parnas and Fruman are the guys who set up the meeting with Kolomoisky in Tel Aviv for Rudy Giuliani. Now, all this is about ready supposedly to be reviewed. Bill Barr says he's going to look closely at all this information that Rudy Giuliani has put out. And it's our job to lay out the narrative of exactly what happened so that Giuliani is forced to lay out as much of this. They can't afford to have independent journalism get too far out ahead of them, because then Giuliani won't look like he's this crusader anymore. He won't look like he's being transparent in producing these documents. He always talks about documents, but he's not producing any documents. The reason is that nobody wants this to be revealed. These are covert actions. That's why we're standing here at JSOC. These are covert actions. And covert actions, by their very nature, are much harder to figure out, and that's why we go to things like metadata, like the IP addresses and so forth, okay? So you can see here the beautiful monuments. Thank you, sacrifice to all of our veterans, by the way, here on President's Day. So to recap, just to quickly recap this, and I don't want to try to put too fine a point on it, but Dmitry Alperovitch for CrowdStrike. There's an article out today in CBS News saying it's a conspiracy theory that Trump said that there was a server in Ukraine. I think Trump knows that this was more than just BlackBerries. I think he knows there was also launch codes involved. I think he may actually also know of the brokering of this, of the spoils of war of Gaddafi. And there was a similar plan for the brokering the spoils of war for Syria. Just didn't happen. And then there was a little bit of a frustration when Trump won, because they wanted 2 more tranches of $150 billion to Soleimani. This is why Soleimani, if I was Peter Strzok, I don't know, I would be trying to get rid of Trump any way I could, because I want those 2 extra $150 billion tranches. We know what the dynamics are. That's what I'm saying is, in this, it's a little bit complicated and it's a little bit speculative, but it has to be because it's covert operations. But if you look at, Mark Kulak did a great show last night. He's got a 4-part series on Adam Schiff, and it really reveals the intelligence background of Adam Schiff. Whereas there's a lot of this conspiracy theory about the Standard Hotel and a lot of the Q stuff. Love Q followers because they're the greatest researchers, but a lot of diversions on Adam Schiff. If you look back, Adam Schiff's dad, military intelligence. I know they say he's, they got some cover stories, but his dad was military intel. And if you go back through his wife, she's also got a lot of folks that are involved in the military industries as well. So this Sanderson guy, this James Dean Sanderson, is all about special operations, writes a whole bunch of books about MI6 and so forth. This is his father-in-law right now. I think he's dead now, but he writes all about all these special operations. Get into the guts of what he's saying and the weapons brokering background that Schiff has been just one heartbeat away from his whole life. Remember, he's been on the Intel committee for 10 years. He knows what's going on. He's a key hand in all this, and the benefit of all the impeachment is now you're seeing it in open. We saw it, Task Force and I saw it a little bit early, because he wouldn't be sitting there, he wouldn't be coming across the Longworth cafeteria and coming over and sitting with us in an empty cafeteria with his salad, right, if he didn't want to know who we were and listen to our conversation. He wanted to know if I had one of the Goner Blackberries or not. That's what he wanted to know. And he knows I know. I mean, Gonter is an interesting guy. He runs Splunk. He's done, for people who are in the networking, they know that Splunk is a network manager and also a log processor. So he would have been the person, for instance, Gonter would have been the person who was monitoring the Awans on Capitol Hill. He would, when you have a whole bunch of operatives spying for you, right, you want to monitor their activities. You want to monitor when they log in. Splunk does that. Splunk looks at things that are in a log file. This looks, I'll turn it here to Courage, give you a little bit different look. So Gonter's, and it's canon, it's not anything we didn't say it was. So I believe that Gonter, military intelligence, remember, DIA, human intelligence, he's on Capitol Hill, he's looking at the log files. he would be the person to know that the Awans logged in 5,111 times in the Canon server, okay? He would be the person who would have provided that information to a Teresa Grafenstein, who was the Inspector General that Nancy Pelosi put in 2009. Remember, if you're going to do this thing on Capitol Hill with 2009 and take down all these countries, you're Nancy Pelosi, right? You better put in an Inspector General in from DOD that knows the plan. Because otherwise the person's going to say, hey, wait a minute here. We got these PAC ISI guys that aren't here, that they're either in New York at the UN or they're in Pakistan, and they're logging into your server. I mean, this is something I would have noticed, and I know Matt Garner would have noticed the first day looking at Splunk, right? Matt Garner would go, that ain't right. And Splunk does that. Splunk, I was interviewing with Splunk probably before 2009. So I know Splunk would have immediately come up with the red flag and said, wait a minute, this is where Farsight comes in. You've got to log in from a long, long way away. And they don't work on Capitol Hill. They're in Islamabad, and they're at a little hospital that's doing drug processing in the basement with all the students at night. There's something wrong here. This doesn't look like a representative from California, right? So Garner was the guy, the technical guy, looking at the illegal logins. He would have been the guy providing the log information to Teresa Grafenstein. Teresa Grafenstein would have then been doing the report. This is why it's so important to understand that Teresa Grafenstein is the handler for the spy ring in Congress. The reason she's doing the limited hangouts with Luke Rosiak and showing him a spreadsheet every once in a while and a presentation every once in a while is to get Luke's trust that she's the good person. She's the good person on Capitol Hill. She's the one who was trying to solve the problem. No, she wasn't. If I would have been on that job, if I would have been Matt Gaunter looking at the first login by Hina Alvi, or the first login from Imran Awan from Sialkot, I would have said, hey, we got a login from a place that's currently, at war between Pakistan and in the Kashmir Pass in India. This is a terrorist group. This is like being funded by this guy named Ibrahim. What's going on here? If I got emails from a guy named Muhammad at cellplan.com or Muhammad at LCC, lightbridgecommunication.com, a company owned by Ibrahim, and they were sending stuff, or stuff was going to, or they were on the CC list for 123 at house.mail.gov, I would immediately go, hey, wait a minute, who's Muhammad at cellplan.com? That ain't right. Right? So this is something that Matt Garner, with the tools that Splunk has and the log processing tools that Splunk has, would have picked it up immediately. These are things that you solve within 5 seconds. It wouldn't take you 8-9 years. So they had to be in on it. Teresa Grafenstein had to be in on the cover-up, to giving drips and drabs, little breadcrumbs out to Luke Rosiak to look like the hero in his book, right? That Gaunter had to be the guy who was going to manage from a technical level. And that's, again, the double-edged sword here. Because now I know I can go get Splunk logs. And that's new evidence. And see, we keep turning over these rocks that are new sources of evidence. It keeps getting more and more complicated for these guys, and they keep having to come up with these kind of cockamamie solutions, like we're going to fire Bill Barr because he doesn't have the intelligence to say that Roger Stone, Jerome Corsi should have just said, hey, I'm not the back channel to WikiLeaks. So let me review on my way back here. The bottom line is Adam Schiff runs a Humpty Dumpty operation on Capitol Hill for his investors. Bijan Kian, there's a bunch of Hollywood producers, in LA. We talked to Tom Nidus, is the guy who launders their contributions or kickbacks or pay to play or bribes or whatever you want to call it. We said he did it in New York. We said he did it in LA. We said he did it in Florida and Chicago, major cities, people who benefit from these Humpty Dumpties, basically. And then you go all in just like a partnership, like a pool of anything. And then you're going to split the takings. It's just like a venture, like we were doing a mining venture and we had 20 people going into a mining venture. Whatever comes out of the mine is what we split. And that's what happened with Libya. Zero footprint. That's what happened with Syria, which was timber sycamore. And the most valuable prize, the point of this talk today, the most valuable prize were the missiles. Everything about the missile is valuable. The propellant is valuable. The guidance system is valuable. The electronics, these are the most important things of the missile. The metal, the alloys of the missile are extremely important. The launch codes obviously are the most important. It's like, even though the keys of the car are only, you know, $20 or $50 now, and the car is a $100,000 Porsche or whatever, you don't drive it unless you got the keys. And the guy who has the keys over there in the dealership is Dmitry Alperovich. And this story that I'm telling you holds together with the IP addresses. And when we get Matt Gonter's Splunk logs, remember, Splunk sucks up all the logs. So if the DNC had 140 servers, now Trump knows, Eric Trump's about 2 hours from me right now. Now Trump knows, it's Scavino and all those guys, Parscale. Now they know that they can go for Splunk logs. And that is a manager of managers. It would be the thing that would have gone out to all of the servers on Capitol Hill and brought all that information in. So even if they destroyed the server, there would be Splunk logs, right? And I love it when we do identify new sources. And I'm getting a lot of great help from a lot of people. Now, people say, well, what happened to all those skip traces that you did? Skip traces are in-depth investigative reports from all the different Awan folks, as well as Natalia Sova and so forth. What happened to those? Some people think Natalia Sova is Nalia S. Awan. There's some support for that, because Natalia Sova disappears, again, Ukrainian, disappears in 2012, and Nalia S. Awan appears in 2013. Don't know. She's an attorney in Columbus like Lisa Page, so again, is she mission essentials or not? We don't know. So we don't have all the answers. That's what I'm saying. We don't have all the answers. But we certainly know what the prize is, and we certainly have the IP addresses and know these conversations were taking place. And we certainly know that the javelins from Redstone Arsenal and Stingers before that were probably the top prize, as far as, once I get the money, what do you want to buy? What do you want to do with the money, Soleimani? What are you going to do with the money, Soleimani? And that's where they sold him javelins. Everything they've hung Trump with is almost an identical repeat of what they did. It's the most wonderful thing in the world to try to figure it out, because they keep presenting all the people involved in the conspiracy. It's the greatest thing. Here they show Vindman. That leads right to Leonid Vindman and Unicredit. And again, Unicredit has already been convicted of smuggling to high tech into Iran. Here's Hunter Biden. They produce him to try to throw him out as a sacrificial lamb, throw him under the bus. He's laundering for China Nuclear Group. How could this be any easier? You know, there seems like they're trying to make it easy, but we just have to hang in there and keep identifying these evidence sources for Trump and keep identifying witnesses. Gonner's going to be a great witness. Teresa Grafenstein's still going to be a great witness. Andre Taggart's still going to be a great witness. Laurel Everly's a great witness. Brittany Freitag is a great witness. All these people are witnesses. Even Chiquea is a witness. Anybody who talked to him one-on-one that can establish his timeline and the people that were around him, their timeline, are incredibly valuable fact witnesses. Again, you have a whole bunch of people who have a vested interest in saying this is a conspiracy theory, right? Well, no, it isn't. Libya did happen. Soleimani did get those missiles. Soleimani did launch missile attacks. He does have new missiles now that were purchased with this comes right from Pompeo and Trump, that he used the money from the Iran nuclear deal to buy missiles. We have the key negotiators in the deal saying that they bought missiles, about half. Bijan Khan says it. He talks about the different missile sites he put missiles in. So this is not speculation. We know Dmitry had the launch codes in Ukraine. because he's talking about the Ukraine shoot down using the Russian Buk missile in eastern Ukraine. Probably the same guy who sold the Russian Buk missiles that were in Libya. Somebody took down all of Gaddafi's missile defense. Somebody took down all of, right before a cyber attack happened, right before all of Gaddafi's. If they didn't have the codes, they wouldn't have been able to steal those batteries before the takedown of Gaddafi. Gaddafi was just too stupid to know that Dimitri's never going to sell you without having a back door. And anybody out there, if you're a resources economy and you bought any Russian missile through Parnas or through OK and Wyansky or through Fruman, or you bought anything through Schiff, any one of Schiff's intermediaries, and you think that Dmitry Alperovich doesn't have a back door, they're just letting you spend all your money and all your resources for missiles, and then when the day comes when you need them, they're going to flip them off, Chuck. That's the plan. That's what's going to happen. So you might live it up while you can go to Epstein Island and buy the missiles. But let me tell you, when the push comes to shove, Gaddafi found out the hard way with the bayonet that it's not a good story. Your missiles are going to be resold. So anyway, this is going to be the answer. This is going to be the answer to the test. It is Schiff, it is Struck. We have the IP addresses. They seem to be coming from the Columbus Defense Supply Center, the DSC. They seem to be moving in the direction, possibly through Redstone Arsenal, but then moving to Fort Huachuca. That from Fort Huachuca, again, all of our metadata has all these people in Fort Huachuca. They all seem to work for Derek Harvey at the Afghan-Pakistan Center in CENTCOM in MacDill Air Force Base. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. And all their Blackberries are configured at the Joint Interoperability Center there. And that is the place where we have all the General Atomic UAVs. It's 15 miles to the border, folks, and it's in the most remote place. The joke about Fort Huachuca, by the way, it's where the Buffalo Soldiers, remember the Bob Marley song? It's where the Buffalo Soldiers were, the black soldiers for 20 years at Fort Huachuca. But they used to say, if you went AOL at Fort Huachuca, we could still see you leaving 3 days later. It's so desolate, right? That's the perfect place. If you're going to do missile exfiltration or sniper rifles or AK-47s or whatever, Fort Huachuca is your place. Let me just review the data. And remember, Farsight is just one of the sources. Remember, I also have the skip traces I paid $2,500 a piece for, in depth. Sorry, we'll get away from this. So there's other sources, other long IP, what I call long IP, to be able to take a whole bunch of conversations and mesh them together and take a whole bunch of different routes. There's a whole bunch of different long IP sources that we have, and I have my skip traces. So it's just not Farsight, but I had to give up one of them because I was getting a lot of questions, where do I get the IP addresses? But Fruman goes to Fort Huachuca again, and Columbus. Alan Apter, he's Atlantic Council, he's NATO, he's Burisma, he's Columbus, Fort Huachuca. Hina Alvey, Fort Huachuca, the Columbus Defense Information Center. You got Schiff and Struck there, Parnas, Fruman, Alan Apter. Let's see, who else do we have there? Storch, remember Storch? You may not remember Storch, but he's the guy who gave all the money to Naboo. He's the guy who gave all the money to Naboo. And we signed a information sharing agreement, which was basically a spying agreement with the Ukrainian intelligence in 1999. Storch is the guy who went over there and gave him the big chunk of money in 2009 to run this whole operation. The answer to the test, is going to be Trump is right. It's not just one server. So CBS may be right in one way. It's not just one server in Ukraine. It's a whole bank of servers. Remember, they got $10 million. Storch gave them $10 million. So it's not just one server. We've talked to Berge. It may be a virtualized server that smeared over a couple of different countries. I talked to somebody from Microsoft yesterday. They won the Azure contract for putting all the DoD and government information in the cloud over Amazon and Google, right? So I had that interview yesterday. So whatever it is, it's not just one server. So CBS is right. It's not just one server, but Trump is right in general. And he simplifies it by saying, what about the server in Kiev? Well, it's more like the server room in Kiev. So maybe Trump's a little bit off. It's not just one server. It's a server room. But he is right. That's where the launch codes are coming from. That's who's configuring the phones. That's where the brokerage center is. That's where the money laundering is happening. Remember, Burisma money launders through Cyprus, then it goes through the British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Island banks, Cayman Island banks, and then comes back in to the DNC through donations. Okay, we're going to leave it there. It's a long technical explanation today, but I felt like there was a lot of drill down. People wanted to know about the IP addresses. How can you be so sure of these IP addresses? The beauty in any kind of network analysis is that once you show people the problem, then everyone comes in and says, oh yeah, I agree. Or better yet, oh yeah, I thought of that. That's fine. If everybody comes in today and goes, oh yeah, Gaddafi's missiles, sure. Schiff selling Gaddafi's missiles to Soleimani. That's so simple. That's so easy. Okay. Like every problem, it's simple when it's solved. Okay. And you'll have a whole bunch of people coming out now and saying, oh, Schiff sold Soleimani's missiles. Oh, Schiff sold Gaddafi's missiles to Soleimani. Ah, that's easy. Yeah. Well, okay, fine. That's where the metadata goes. And we keep identifying new sources. We know there's another Army intel guy in Concannon with Matt Gonter. And it was also a long-time Army, it's so cold here, Army intel. So we'll be able to ask him questions about Gonter. Remember all the people that Luke puts out in his book as heroes? Those are all witnesses. Sean Moran is a witness. Stefan Taylor, whoever that is. I think that's going to be Bill Taylor when it's all said and done. But, Ed Flaherty, all the people that were involved in this money laundering operation and this Humpty Dumpty operation of these 7 countries, they're all witnesses. It's a beautiful thing. And they're all, every little breadcrumb that Teresa Grafenstein put out to make herself look like a hero are all going to be things we drill down on. We got 2 new Awan names this morning, okay? So every day we get more stuff, okay? And once you tighten in the network diagram and you get the network diagram right, and you get the traffic levels right, and you get the IP addresses right, and you get the travel right, then it's easy. Just like the FBI, the first thing they do, they confiscate your phone and they confiscate your laptop. They don't listen to you and your stories. They go right for the phone and the laptop, and then they figure out where you were and they get all your credit card receipts. Then they let you tell your story because they know what the real story is. That's exactly the same approach we're taking here. Okay, everybody, I'm going to let everybody go. Thanks for the great audience this morning. Back to Washington, D.C. We're going to be meeting with some people. We're going to be taking some of the information we got about how people are being flown around with their golf clubs in the United States on military planes. We really don't care about that. What we care about is bringing in a Lev Parnas or a Mifsud. Here's a classic example with Buttigieg and Mifsud. A lot of people don't know that, the second, I think it was I can't remember exactly when Malta got their independence, but it was right around in the early 1900s. I want to believe. It used to be a British crown colony. And I want to say 1905 or something like that. But the second leader of Malta was Buttigieg, right? Not just, Buttigieg's father just wasn't from Malta. Buttigieg just didn't grow up in Malta and learn to speak all these different languages at all these CIA schools. He was basically running between all these different CIA schools. He has about 5 of them on Malta, language schools, right? That's why he speaks 7 languages, right? But that's where I believe he meets Papadopoulos. Great stuff last night by Mark Kulak, by the way. It's Kulacz, Houstonic. He does just such a great job on connecting Papadopoulos to Buttigieg. But it's the same story with Cyprus and Papadopoulos. The guy who negotiates the UN peace treaty with Alexander Downer as the special envoy in 2009 or 2008 in Cyprus is Papadopoulos. So, did they know each other before they met in the wine bar, in the Kensington wine bar in 2016? Sorry about the noise. Yeah, they did. I was the special envoy. I'm Alexander Downer. I was the special envoy negotiating with you and your grandfather, your great uncle, whoever he was, for the whole UN green zone. Remember when we had the Turks come in and take half of Cyprus? And we got the green zone put in 1974? We've been milking that cow for 40 years. That's the best cow we've ever had. That green zone is the best cow we've ever had. We love Papadopoulos around here. You got a suggestion to put a Papadopoulos back in the game here? Great. You got something with Malta that we can work the Malta kid in here? Joe Schmitz? Great. Let's work him in here. Mifsud doesn't get to be... Here's Devin Nunes, right? How does Mifsud get flown over with his situation being involved in the dossier, right? And he's source A in the dossier, folks. And all the lies and all the fake FISAs. How does he get flown into Washington, D.C. the night before, or the 2 nights before the inauguration? Don't you find that a little funny?
Now, I had to listen to this 4 times before I was able to have it make any sense. There are so many players in this web of international treason, it is beyond human comprehension. It got that way because of 2 main reasons. Number 1, the mainstream media is compromised deep state scripted bullshit disguised as journalism and news. Number 2, the lack of vigilance of the American people who didn't have a clue that they should be on point because mainstream media is in cahoots with traitors. The lesser contributing factors are that the crimes are so egregious and heinous, most people couldn't wrap their heads around it even if it was exposed, and the collective apathy that keeps people from acting because they believe you can't fight City Hall. Lesson learned over and over, particularly in Virginia's Second Amendment rally. What was the net result? When the traitors didn't get strung up from lampposts, they passed gun confiscation laws. I'm telling you, they will not, repeat, they will not stop until angry, well-behaved mobs become outraged to that point. What's needed is a revolution, a coming together of all races, creeds, and political persuasions in the common realization that our differences do not make us enemies. Our differences and diversities give us the advantage of resilience and tenacity, and by the sharing of information, the ability to think outside of the mainstream media-induced paradigms. Wars happen when the government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution happens when the people figure it out for themselves. And I'll tell you something else. Get a permanent marker and write this on the wall. There will be no effective difference in the state the world is in today and has been for 240 years since the founding of the Republic unless and until the blood of traitors and globalist Nazi socialist scumbags flows to the height of a horse's bridle in the streets. I don't give a rat's ass what the plan is or how many levels of multidimensional chess you play with these assholes. The only effective negotiation tactics is bullets and rope. Period. When you and I are long separated from this mortal coil, a future digital archaeologist may find this video among thousands of others, and in retrospect he will know that the truth was boldly spoken by at least a few among the billions of enslaved human beings whose shit turds are being tallied by a D-wave techno-Nazi dictatorship that George Orwell would have lost sleep over. He will play it back on ancient machines long ago rendered obsolete and will say to himself, damn, this dude called it precisely as it was. He will then be Arkancided for his discovery. Please subscribe to our backup channels, Net4Truth USA 2 Patriot channel, BitChute.com/net4Truth USA, and drop.space / Net4Truth USA. We fly so close to the target, we are on our 5th fighter jet. We will be relentless and persistent until the enemies of freedom are defeated. You can support this channel by using the links in the description, but for a $100 donation, I will personally send you a autographed hardcover special edition copy of Land of Childhood's Fears. Also, visit my bookstore at lulu.com/net4truth USA. If you are viewing this video on BitChute, you can use the links in the description to support us, or simply click the green $ dot on our video to support this channel. Thank you. Links are in the description section.